Hello, and welcome to None of the Above. My name is Steve Nemirovsky, and I'm your host. None of the Above is a political program where we analyze the causes of dysfunction and polarization in our political system. Obviously, any political system has a certain amount of dysfunction and polarization needed to kind of make it work. But our system nowadays seems a little too dysfunctional and a little too polarized. So on this show, we look at the causes of this growing polarization, growing and disruptive dysfunction is keeping us from solving major problems that we face today. And in each show, we try and provide solution sets. Often our solution sets are intended to get you involved in the political system, show you a new outlet, bring an idea to you, and just kind of let you run with that idea. So today we're going to continue our series on difference makers. These are people who have formed groups to step up to solve problems. Our last show was on campaign finance reform, a group called Represent Us, who is trying to pass an anti-corruption act in all 50 states and then at the federal level. So I refer you to the last show for that. Today's show is going to be a little different twist, also on campaign finance reform, and this time dealing with the Citizens United case that we've talked about in many cases. Before we get to today's show, however, I wanted to give you a little insight to a speech I heard recently that I thought was interesting, and I think for the reason it'll become clear when I explain it. Every year in Aspen, the Aspen Institute has a series during which they usually bring in one of the justices from the United States Supreme Court. I like to attend these sessions. I think they're fascinating. The Supreme Court justices are just so brilliant, and their discussion of the cases is always so enlightening to me. This particular year, Justice Kennedy came to speak, and in his introductory remarks, and I'm not going to try and quote him exactly, so if I'm misquoting his intent, I apologize to the justice, but I think I've got it pretty good here. During his remarks, he made it clear that he too, as a U.S. Supreme Court justice, is pretty fed up with the dysfunction in the political system, and pretty strongly alluded to the fact that he can't understand why our Congress can't get their arms around and solve the immigration problem. Now, he's not proposing a solution set, and I don't think as a Supreme Court justice he wants to go there, but I found it interesting that a Supreme Court judge would go to the extreme of pointing out the dysfunction in the political system and actually mentioning a particular issue that he believes is an outgrowth or a representative of this dysfunction. Normally the Supreme Court justices, I think, are very measured in what they have to say about issues. They know that the issues could land on their desk, and they don't want to normally get involved. They try and limit themselves when they're discussing cases to a very particular language and to be very exacting in how they do this. So I'm not trying to pick on Justice Kennedy. I actually found his remarks very enlightening, and most of all, I found his remarks surprising by virtue of the fact that a Supreme Court justice was willing to call out the Congress of the United States. Doesn't happen very often.